Good morning, second graders. I am so excited to see you guys here again. I hope you guys have been all doing well, being away from school. I know that I miss you guys so much, and your other teachers are missing you so much as well, but we are so excited when we see all the work that you've been doing, and we're really, really proud of you. So keep up the great work. Today our lesson is from Domain 9, which is all about the American Civil War. Today we're on Lesson 7, and the title of our lesson today is Robert E. Lee. Ooh, sounds like a very important person. Let's find out what made him so important. I'm going to get right in and get started and share my screen with you. As always, for listening and learning, some materials that you need are something to write on, something to write with, and if you have somebody at home that you want to listen to the story with, you can grab them as well. Alrighty, I'm gonna get right started and share my screen. Share this one. Alrighty. Okay, so here we have a scene of a battle scene, picture of a battle scene, and let's review some of the stuff we went over yesterday. So, we know that right now in American history, America is in a civil war, and a civil war is a war between two groups of people in the same nation or the same country. So the two sides of our war are the northern side, also known as the Union, and the southern side, also known as the Confederacy. We know that from yesterday's reading, the Union thought they were surely going to win. They thought that they had a bigger army and they were more prepared. But when they came to the first battle at Manassas, that was not really the case, that the Confederacy won that first battle. So the Confederacy actually won the first battle of the war. Now, let's see, sorry guys, I lost my place, thank you for being patient with me. Now, the war is far from over because there's gonna be a lot more battles that we're gonna read about. If you remember, President Abraham Lincoln is president during this time of the Civil War. And we know that President Lincoln said that it's easier said than done winning the first battle because he really thought it was going to be easy breezy for the northern states or the Union to win the first war. But in reality, it was easier said than done. It wasn't as easy as he thought. All right, guys, so we've already heard about the first battle of the Civil War, and today as you listen, I want you to learn about the more battles that are to come, and we're going to learn about a man who was chosen to take command of the Confederate Army, and what might have happened after that. So maybe we're learning about Robert E. Lee. Maybe he is the man that was chosen to take command over the Confederate Army. Let's find out. I'm going to pop right down. This is a picture from yesterday, so let's get right into today's story. Let's see. All right, here we are. All righty. Here we have Gettysburg Wasteland. Do you see in this picture? I see a land that is very destructed or destroyed after the battle. After 2 days of fighting, the cornfields around Gettysburg, Pennsylvania were all destroyed so that one could hardly tell that there had been crops at all. Green, grassy pastures that had been there were trampled by so many boots and horses' hooves and were now nothing but mud. The trees in the forest had lost their leaves and many were burned or simply blown to bits by cannonballs. In short, all around Gettysburg was a wasteland. A wasteland is an area that is devastated or destroyed. But the battle was not over yet. So all of these battlefields were once green pastures with a bunch of crops that were grown, and now all of that is destroyed, or we could call it a wasteland. Alrighty, here we have Robert E. Lee, and in my picture it looks like he is studying a map. It was past midnight. The date was July 3rd, 1863. Two Confederate soldiers stood guard outside the door of a small stone farmhouse at the edge of the battlefield. Several Confederate officers paced back and forth in the yard. "Should we see if he is ready to issue orders?" asked one of the officers. "No, don't bother him. The old man will let us know when he is ready," said another. Inside the house, a man stood hunched over a table, studying a map by candlelight. He was not a very old man, just 56 years old, but constant war and worries had brought new wrinkles to his face. He was far more thin and frail, or weak, than he had been just 2 years before. But all the soldiers loved General Lee as though he were their own father. They called him the old man out of respect. A general is a military officer in charge of soldiers. General Lee was in charge of the Confederate soldiers. So it looks like they really loved and respected this general. All right, maybe I can zoom in just a pinch. Or maybe not. There we go. All right. Here we have the Lee family home where Robert E. Lee must have lived. General Lee's full name was Robert E. Lee. General Lee was born in 1807. He was the son of a hero from the Revolutionary War who had fought bravely alongside George Washington to make America free from Great Britain. What was the Revolutionary War? Oh yeah, that was the war that was fought between America and Great Britain to earn their freedom. And who is George Washington? Yeah, he was America's first president, and he was also a general during this war. Let's see. Robert E. Lee joined the Army at age 17 and graduated second in his class from the United States Military Academy. He had the second highest scores in his class, which means he did very well in school. Then Lee served in the U.S. Army during the Mexican-American War. Lee was proud to serve in the U.S. Army before the Civil War, but Robert E. Lee was born and raised in Virginia, a Confederate state. Lee married Mary Custis, a great-granddaughter of George and Martha Washington. After they married, Robert and Mary lived in Mary's plantation home known as the Arlington House. This is a photo of Arlington House in Virginia. Lee did not think the South should secede from the Union. What does secede mean again? Oh yeah, it means to separate or leave. He didn't think that they should secede. Like many other people, he wanted to find a peaceful way to end the disagreement, and he swore he would never break the oath or promise he had taken to uphold the U.S. Constitution. As a soldier, he made an oath to do what was best for the United States, and he didn't want to break that promise. And in that promise, he didn't want there to be this war because he didn't think that was best for the United States. All right, here we have Jefferson Davis cabinet with Lee. At first, Lee refused to join the Confederate Army when President Jefferson Davis asked him to take command. Remember, Jefferson Davis was elected president of the Confederacy. He is the man seated with the paper in his hand. All right, so maybe this one? It looks like he's the one seated with the paper in his hand. Then, just before the Battle of Fort Sumter, President Lincoln asked Lee if he would agree to take command of the entire Union Army. Lee refused that offer as well. Why do you think General Lee refused both offers? Yeah, he didn't want his country to be divided, so he didn't want to take sides. That would be my guess. Only when his home state of Virginia finally decided to secede and join the Confederacy did Lee finally make up his mind. He hated the thought of fighting against the United States, but even more, he hated the thought of fighting against his home state of Virginia. General Lee became commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, making him one of the most powerful and recognizable figures in the Confederate Army. This image shows Confederate President Jefferson Davis and his closest advisors, including General Lee in the middle, discussing their war plan. Advisors are people who give advice. So all these people are meeting with the president of the Confederacy to give him advice about what to do. Thanks in large part to General Lee's excellent abilities as a general, he commanded the Confederate Army to make victories in major battles on the field before Gettysburg. But still, so many men had died in those battles that there was no end to the war in sight. So he's an awesome general and he is helping them win victories, but it's not helping end the war any sooner. Alrighty, here we have Lee telling Venable his plan. I'm going to guess that's how you say his name, but I'm not really sure. There was a knock on General Lee's door in Gettysburg. It was Major Venable, Lee's trusted friend and aide or helper. "General, I have reports from your field commanders," said Major Venable. "Go ahead," he said, turning his attention back to the maps on the table. "General Ewell had trouble organizing his men, sir, and General Rhodes failed to attack as ordered. General Elderly tried, but he gave up as darkness approached." Lee tapped his knuckles on the table and stared at the maps. There had been nothing but bad news all day. After 2 days of fighting, the Union Army held the high ground. Its soldiers and cannons spread in the tight line atop a long ridge, refusing to budge no matter how fiercely the Confederates attacked. The Union Army was on a higher ground than the Confederate Army, so they had a better position and ability to see, and they refused to move from that spot despite how much the Confederates attacked. "I have made my decision," Lee said. "We will strike at the heart of the Union line at Cemetery Ridge and divide their forces. Then the rest of our army will attack on the left and right." So they thought that they would attack the middle and then both of the sides on the left and the right. Kind of sounds similar to when we were learning about the attacks in Greece. That sounds like someone else's plan that we learned about beforehand. All right, here we have Lee, and he is greeting his soldiers. Greeting is just like a hello. In the morning, the old man rode out to greet his soldiers. The men cheered and waved their hats whenever Lee rode past, and he waved and smiled confidently, doing his best to keep their spirits high. How did the soldiers feel about Lee if they cheered and waved their hats? How'd they feel about him? Yeah, they really liked him. They're showing him that they really like him and respect him. Later that morning, though, things did not go exactly according to Lee's plans. The Confederate forces attacked, hoping to break through the Union lines and send the enemy retreating from the field. Lee knew that if he succeeded, the South would have a chance to win the war. If he lost, it may not. What do you think is going to happen next? Do you think they're going to win and be successful, be able to win the war, or no? Make a prediction. All right, here we have Picketts Charge. The battle went on all day, but the most important moment came when Lee ordered General Pickett to lead his men in a daring charge across a wide open field directly at the middle of Union lines. The move, known as Picketts Charge, was a catastrophe for the Confederates. A catastrophe is an event that causes great trouble or destruction. So Pickett's charge caused a great deal of trouble for the Confederate side. Half of Pickett's men were killed, wounded, or captured. At the end of the third day, the Union still held the high ground. Lee had lost the battle and had to retreat. Remember, retreat means to kind of run away or go back to Virginia, abandoning hopes of invading deep into the North. Oh no. So it looks like they didn't go as planned. Alrighty, here we have a woman mourning. Mourning means that you're very sad. You're grieving and you have a lot of sadness. The day after the battle was the 4th of July, a day when Americans normally celebrate their independence. What country did America gain independence from again? Oh yeah, Great Britain. We fought that Revolutionary War to gain that independence, and we celebrate that on the 4th of July. So normally it's a very celebratory day. In 1863, however, celebrations were not so cheerful. Even in the North, where word quickly spread that the Union had won a major battle at Gettysburg, a war-torn nation was exhausted from battle. In that 3 days of the battle at Gettysburg, many, many men had died, were wounded, or had been captured on both the Union and Confederate sides. This battle proved to be one of the bloodiest in all of the Civil War. With all of that bloodshed, few people on either side found reasons to celebrate. Gosh, that's heartbreaking. She must be really sad because people are dying. Maybe she lost a son, or her husband maybe was in the battle. It's really sad. Alrighty, guys. So for the next part of this is where I'm going to ask you comprehension questions. And that's where I just kind of see how well you understood the story. So this is where you can grab a pencil and a piece of paper. We're going to go over them together. Alrighty, here we go. Who was the commander of the Confederate Army? Number 1, who was the commander of the Confederate Army? I have 30 seconds on the clock. You may begin. Who was the commander of the Confederate Army? Alrighty, question number 2. How did the Confederate soldiers feel about General Lee? Oh, to answer your first question, the commander of the Confederate Army was General Robert E. Lee. As a nickname, they called him the Old Man, and he was from the state of Virginia. So how did the Confederate soldiers feel about General Lee? You're going to write that down for number 2. How do they feel about General Lee? They really loved and respected him. They thought he was a great leader. Remember, we saw, if I look back at my text, that they cheered when he walked by. That shows that they really respect him. Question number 3. General Lee refused Lincoln's offer to command the Union Army. He also refused the Confederate offer at first. Why do you think he didn't want to pick a side? Yeah, at first he didn't really agree with the Southern states seceding. He didn't think that it was the best thing for the country. And he made an oath to always do what was the best for the country. So when the Southern states seceded, he said, I'm not going to be your general because I don't agree with what you're doing. But then when his state of Virginia finally seceded, he changed his mind and he decided to be their commander or their general. Now, we saw up in this picture that the president of the time is meeting with advisors. Why do you think he would need advisors to help him make decisions? You can write down what you think. Alrighty, so I think that being president is probably a really hard job because you have to make really important decisions. It's always good to get a couple points of view because other people know things that maybe we don't know. So it's good to put a lot of heads together to make those decisions. I think it's very wise to have advisors to give you advice when making an important decision. Alrighty, our last question for today is this. Why do you think that Robert E. Lee was asked to be the commander of the Confederate Army? Why do you think that General E. Lee was chosen to be the commander of the General Army, or the general of the Confederate Army? That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it could be because he was really well respected. People thought he would do a great job and that he could be trusted. Yeah, all of those are good answers. Alrighty, we're gonna jump right into our word work of today. Our word work is advisors. I'll say advisors. Your turn. Good job. In the read aloud, we heard this sentence. Confederate President Jefferson Davis and his closest advisors met to discuss their war plan. Advisors are people who give advice. Teachers, parents, coaches, and friends can all be advisors. Who do you think of as your advisors? Yeah, sometimes you come and ask me or Mr. Abbey for advice about something. Maybe it's just even, I don't really understand this question. Can you guys help me? We are advisors. We're advising you or giving you advice about what to do. You can write down or tell someone next to you a sentence in which you do use the word advisors. When I'm trying to make a big decision, my mom is a great advisor for me. She gives awesome advice. That's my sentence. You can either write one down or turn and tell someone next to you. Alrighty. Next thing is, what word are we working on? Advisors. Good job. Advisors, remember, are somebody who gives advice. Okay, so today your journal entry is going to be all about Robert E. Lee. So you're going to write 2 to 3 sentences describing General Robert E. Lee. Some questions that you might want to answer as you're writing are, what important job did Robert E. Lee have? Remember, he was the general of the Confederacy. What kind of person do you think Robert E. Lee was? I think he was probably pretty brave if he's leading this army. I think he probably has great leadership because they're putting him in charge. And we know that he's probably a pretty upstanding person if they all respect him. You can tell me, do you think he was a good general? Why or why not? You can talk to me a little bit about, what do you think General Lee's soldiers thought about him? I know that they cheered as he walked by and they waved their hats. So what did they think about him? And maybe some adjectives or describing words to describe General E. Lee. Alrighty guys, that is all the time we have for today. I am going to look so forward to reading your journals. I've been hearing some awesome ones thus far, and I'm really excited to see what you guys have learned, and you're going to tell me all about General Robert E. Lee in your journal. I'm really excited to read them, and I miss you all so much, but like I said, I'm so proud of the work you've been doing. Can't wait to talk soon. Have a wonderful day. 5 seconds.